the Korean War like, hallway, and then you got it, and we could play the uptown menus that way.
That's wonderful. That's great. Wow. I'm glad that you kept up that effort. That was a really unique concept. So are you using like besides going, well, I can ask you during the program because we're pushing up on 1:00. I'll save my questions for you.
And we are live on Facebook, so say hello to Facebook. Hi, Facebook. We will be starting up very shortly with General Michael Ferriter and hopefully Major Terri Swank and several other people, veterans who have stories to share. And Ellie, you have the national anthem ready to go.
I do, as well as the theme music, and I think I recognize everyone that will be with us today in the waiting room.
Yep.
Everybody looks good.
Everybody looks legit. Even that fishy Dan Steitner character. I see him there. And Lamont, oh, excellent. This is excellent.
All right. Well, I will start the music and begin the program.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another edition of VBC at Home Live for this Wednesday, July 8th. My name is Todd DiPastino, and I'm the director of the Veterans Breakfast Club, which produces this event. We're a nonprofit that has been around since 2008, dedicated to creating a platform where veterans can share their stories with the public. So we want veterans and non-veterans to join us to hear some stories. We've moved all our programming online in March. And this has been wonderful because we've been able to have special guests like the ones that we're going to have today from Columbus, Ohio. Retired Major General Michael Ferriter, who's CEO and president of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum, is with us. And but before we get started and before we get to the general, I do want to introduce some people with us here. I'll start with the intern. We have intern, who also is known as Libby DiPastino. We have media producer and communications, who's also known as Ellie. We have Lauren Del Ricci. Hello, Lauren. How are you?
Hi, Todd. What am I known as?
You're known as the associate director and Navy veteran and snipe, right?
Yeah.
Snipe.
We can go with that too. Pit snipe. Yep.
We have Sean, who's known as our program director and nothing else except for new guy, maybe, right?
New guy. I'll take that.
Yeah, and we also call you every once in a while haircut.
Yes, I decided to go with the military buzz.
You've got a military buzz, exactly. Yeah. That's what. And once again, my name is Todd DiPastino, and I'm the director of the Veterans Breakfast Club. And we've been around again since 2008, doing programs like these. We always like to begin our programs like for those of you who never joined us in one of our face-to-face events, we would hold them in church basements, in banquet facilities, in hotel ballrooms, in you name it. I mean, VFWs, American Legions, anywhere where they could serve a buffet for breakfast and get us together in the evening. It would often be at a bar or a pub. And we would just have a microphone and go around the room with the microphone and have the veterans share stories. And these were magical events. And we were so sad that we can't do this face-to-face in person now. But these virtual events really do have a benefit, and that is we're able to draw in some people who normally can't join us. But at our events, we always like to begin with the national anthem, kind of just to get us in the mood. And I'm looking around here on the Zoom side for anybody who could lead us in the national anthem. And I would say that we want to go to Marianne Mangini, don't we, Lauren?
Yeah, I don't see anyone that looks willing to sing for us.
Yeah,
today.
I don't see any eager volunteers. And we do draft people. We do draft people to sing the national anthem. But let's go with Marianne Mangini. She was kind enough to record this for us.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
All right.
Thank you very much, Marianne. Man, is she good. Thank you for that recording of our national anthem. I do notice, I believe Terri Swank is probably in the waiting room, TSWA there, L. But if you're sent a message in the waiting room, it's because we can't identify you. And we've had an issue with Zoom bombers in the past. I don't even want to get into it because I'll just start to break out in sweat. But, we don't want that to happen again. So we're a little bit careful about, oh, there is Terri. Hi, Terri. How are you? You're one of our special guests today. Before we get started, I do want to make a few announcements. Number one, we're moving our VBC coffee hour to Friday morning. So Friday, July 10th at 9 a.m., we'll be having our coffee hour. This is an informal hour of conversation and storytelling. It's a heck of a lot of fun. Please do join us if you're available. That will be Friday, July 10th at 9 a.m. I also want to invite people, if you do not get our emails with our schedule updates, let us know your email address so we could put you on the list and send you our updates, because we're in the midst of changing some of our programming around a little bit. I also want to put this announcement, or I guess it's a call to action out there. And this is something that John Ferguson, who's here, Vietnam veteran, he traveled with us back to Vietnam in February. This is something that he suggested, and I think it's a great idea. This is a program on drill sergeants. Many people remember their drill sergeants. Now, I've got to ask, okay, before we get started, drill sergeants are in the Army and in the Marine Corps. What are they called in the Navy? Chris Parolo, I'm going to ask you.
Company commander.
Company commander is your drill sergeant.
Right, and they wear a red rope on their uniform there. Lauren, back me up on that if it's changed since way back when, but company commander.
Yeah, we were talking about this the other day. I remember the acronym RDC or CDC, like command duty commander, or recruit duty commander. That sounds about right. Yeah, it's been a while though, Chris.
Right, agree. Well, me too. Oh my God. But yeah, he was the company commander, and they all wore, you knew who they were. You knew they were in charge of a company because they would be at Great Lakes there at the Recruit Training Center. They would all have a red rope on the right shoulder there. We call it red.
Were they as frightening and intimidating as the drill sergeants that I have in my imagination from, Parris Island?
I can't imagine anything worse than Parris Island, but they were certainly intimidating. And one day I'll tell you a story about that.
Lamont, is that true? I mean, could you testify that it was they were called company commanders?
Well, in Annapolis, we didn't have company commanders because the midshipmen. Well, we were allowed to pretty much physically motivated, mentally restructure each other. But we did have Marine Corps instructors in terms of like helping us out with drill and shooting and all that stuff like that. So we actually had Marine Corps drill instructors that were there at the academy.
And were they frightening?
Absolutely.
Now,
I'm about to break into a sweat right now.
just thinking about it. Okay, and then before one, not to beat this to death, but what about the Air Force? What are they called in the Air Force?
They're called TIs, or training instructors, and you identify them because they wear a Smokey the Bear hat. So in other words, they wear the same sort of hat that National Park Rangers wear, and they have the same reputation as drill sergeants or drill instructors, but they're known as TIs, or training instructors in the Air Force.
Okay, that's perfect. So on Wednesday, I believe it's Wednesday, July 22nd, we want to have a whole program devoted to TIs, to company commanders, to drill sergeants. We would like veterans who had these roles. And of course, we want to invite you and your memories. I know John Ferguson remembers his drill instructor very well. Please send us some contacts. If you know somebody who's a drill instructor or a TI in the service, please do let us know. We'd love to have them come on our program and talk about their service experience and kind of walk us through that job. We've had some drill instructors, join us and share stories over the years, and I will contact them and hopefully they'll be able to join us. But I do know it's an extremely demanding job, and but a very rewarding one from what I recall drill sergeants sharing their stories. So again, please in the chat, if you could, name a name or send me an email at todd@veteransbreakfastclub.com with any of your suggestions for drill instructor guests for July 22nd. That would be wonderful. One more announcement I want to make, and that has to do with the stuff behind me right here. You see these great boxes of appetizing food. We've got, let's take a tour, shall we? We have Mexican style chicken stew right here. We have, brisket entree. Some lucky person is going to get the brisket entree. We're doing a dinner and a show with MREs on Monday night. That is July 20th for $25. You will be able to join us and have a magnificent meal. Say, oh no, that's the 2018 version. How about chicken, noodles, and vegetables and sauce? And it comes in this very appetizing brown packaging. And you will open it up, learn how to heat it up, and we will all have dinner together on Monday night at 6 p.m. We will have some musical entertainment. We'll have wonderful stories shared about food in the military. I actually had this, 2 people have requested this. Instead of sending me an MRE, could you send me a World War II sea ration? And I said, absolutely not. I mean, we don't have the insurance that would insure us for that kind of liability.
They're still out there, Todd. They're still out there, Todd.
I've heard that they're out there, Jeff. They are out there?
Yes, they're out there.
Well, maybe we could just have them sign a waiver. We got to give the people what they want, Todd.
No. I think I'll get sick if I watch them eat that. So you're going to get an MRE. And if you do have a special request, absolutely we'll honor it. I know somebody didn't want the tuna and somebody else didn't want something spicy, but please do join us. It's a great way to support the Veterans Breakfast Club. It'll be a very fun evening. That is Monday, July 20th. Ellie, if you could put the link to the Eventbrite registration in the chat in both on the Facebook side and on the Zoom side, that would be wonderful. Okay. And then finally, one more. Yes, you got yours in the mail. Ken Rozicki got his spaghetti with beef and sauce. How about that? That's because I like you, Ken. I didn't give you the vegetable crumbles with the taco sauce. No, that goes to, well, you'll see who gets that one. One more announcement, and that is, of course, every Monday we release our podcast, Truth About War. And I do encourage you to listen to the one that was released this week, because it was with the great American writer, Tim O'Brien, probably the best writer to come out of the Vietnam War, one of the greatest living American novelists. He's a friend of the Veterans Breakfast Club, and he very kindly came onto our program. As many of you know, I taught college for many years and always taught a course on the Vietnam War and always assigned Tim O'Brien. So it was very special to have him on the program. And I just thought I would share, he does a couple readings on the podcast. And Ellie, if you could put a link to where people could listen to the podcast, maybe on our website, I thought I would share just a short clip of Tim O'Brien reading a selection from my favorite book, which is of his, which is The Things They Carried. And I will go, we end the podcast with him doing this reading. I'll share this recording with you now. Now for our bonus clip from Tim O'Brien, where he closes us out with another reading from The Things They Carried.
War is hell, but that's not the half of it. Because war is also mystery and terror and adventure and courage and discovery and holiness and pity and despair and longing and love. War is nasty. War is fun. War is thrilling. War is drudgery. War makes you a man. War makes you dead.
For the Veterans Breakfast Club, I'm Todd DiPastino. Thanks for listening. So please do check out that episode. That is really a special one and a fascinating one. Tim O'Brien, Truth About War. It was released on Monday. But now finally, I want to get to our stories and our guests today. In October of 2018, on the banks of the Scioto River, I think that's how people in Columbus call it, the Scioto River, in Columbus, Ohio, opened a really unique and remarkable museum, the National Veterans Memorial and Museum, that is unlike any other in the country. It's a history museum, yes, in a sense, but it doesn't cover any particular historical period. It's a veterans museum, certainly, but it doesn't cover, any particular war. It covers the entire and very personal experiences of all the people who have served in the armed forces since the Revolutionary War. It is an institution that really matches, I think, more than any other across this country, the mission of the Veterans Breakfast Club, which is to share the stories of veterans. And we have the president and CEO of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum with us today, retired Major General Michael Ferriter. And I have to say, I'm sorry, Lieutenant General, sorry about that, General. And that's a key distinction because I believe, sir, you are the highest ranking veteran we've ever had on our program.
Well, that's okay. You were going to get a little drill sergeant out of me there for a second, but you caught yourself just in time.
So, General, thank you for joining us today. And we were talking just before we went live here on air, and another way that you were going to chew me out was if I dared to say that the museum was closed because of COVID-19, and you very much objected to that idea, that you never really did close down, that you shifted very nimbly and quickly to virtual formats, and so you've been very active these past 4 months.
Yes, we have. So first of all, let me thank you all for allowing me to join you. Let me also thank you for my freedom. A lot of people say thanks for your service. I kind of think that everyone on this did much more than service. I think you gave America the freedom, and I like to make that distinction for what it's worth. And then thanks for being here today. On about March 12th, my team came to me and said, we're gonna have to close, and this COVID thing's pretty bad. And I said, we're not gonna close. And if you're playing shortstop and right field, go get a football helmet, because we're gonna change the game. And so I said, we're gonna just pivot and go virtual, distributed, digital, and foot traffic is not mandatory for us to get these stories out to the veterans. And when you think about it, as the National Veterans Memorial and Museum, very unlikely that a bus of 12 veterans from San Diego are going to drive across country to Columbus, Ohio. Very unlikely that they're coming from Tampa or from New York City necessarily, unless it's one of these awesome reunions. So we already knew that we would eventually create online tours, online events, virtual events. And so all we really did is just jump about 14 months ahead and bring the projects of the future into the present. And I would tell you that in that amount of time, we've we've reached through virtual programming 2.5 million people. And so last year we had 65,000, and some of you included, walk through our doors. And we do a once a month thing called Rally Point, and it is a brunch. We bring the veterans in here, and we make sure that they're not living in their car. We make sure that their best friend isn't Jack Daniels and Mr. Glock, and instead we get them connected, and we even help them find jobs upon occasion. So we normally have 100 or so, and great discussions, programming from the VA and that kind of stuff. But we're averaging 7,000 people on Facebook Live, such as an event such as this. Then we did a Vietnam Veterans Memorial Day for you Vietnam veterans. Thank you. And we did that virtually. Had about 3,200 people attend, and just bust our social media and our email with the thanks from what I believe is probably our most neglected veteran population. And then we did memorial service. We had Secretary Wilkie and General Powell. We had Ryan Mannion from the Travis Mannion Foundation. Her brother killed in combat in Al-Anbar. And then we even had Pierce Morgan doing a shout out for veterans on that thing. Then we did the Korean War. And so we had General Vince Brooks, my friend, who commanded all forces in Korea a few years ago. And we did taping of my father-in-law, who was on Pork Chop Hill and got a DSC, and about 8 other veterans. So we have now welcomed guests back onto the floor in a very safe, clean way. And we're getting 50s and 60s a day now. But in the meantime, we have been driving on to make sure that we tell the amazing story of veterans and reach, and most importantly, impact the lives. We do things to help people, not just to tell stories. Over.
Yeah, I put the link to the museum's website here in the chat for everybody. Ellie, if you could share that on the Facebook Live, it's nationalvmm.org, and you could keep up with their events and their programming. Again, they've been very active virtually. I know that I was one who tuned in on National Vietnam Veterans Day on March 29th to see what you were doing, and it was just wonderfully done. I want to share, if people haven't seen the museum in person, they should make the attempt to do so. You are now, the doors have opened again to the brick and mortar museum, and this is the website here. Look at that design, look at that architecture. I said again before we went live here, it's almost as if, you could make a trip from Pittsburgh to Columbus just to see it from the outside, because it's so visually striking. It's right on the banks of the river. It has this unusual design. General, could you comment a little bit about where this design came from? What's the logic behind it?
Yes, I can. It's hysterical. Most of the time in life, if you pay attention, it's pretty funny. And so they hired me on May 18th in 2018 and told me you have 128 days to open, and you're the only one we've hired. So you might want to hire a staff, develop your SOPs, figure out how to run a museum, and have a stunning presentation. It's the only day, October 28th will be the only day that we have Colin Powell to speak. So get after it. And so one day I was walking around there, and this guy's walking through. We're about 2 weeks from opening, and there's a lot of people that were, doing reconnaissance and sneaking in ahead of time. And I said, "Hey, excuse me, sir, can I help you?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Hey, excuse me, may I help you, sir?" He said, "No." I said, "Do you know where you're going?" He said, "Yeah, I built this place." And I said, "Oh, wow. Did you really?" I said, "Well, man, tell me, what's the deal with the arches? Are the arches like, unbelievable, unbreakable strength?" He said, "I just thought it'd be really cool." And then I said, "Well, what about the circle? Is it like the ring? I'm forever married to my wife, Margie, and it's eternity." He said, "No, he said, actually circular buildings are much harder to build than anyone else." And I just wanted the challenge. But I did ask him this. I said, "So what were you trying to get at?" And he said, I wanted to build ethical space. And I was touched by that thought. And in our world of veterans and military members and family members who support, there's something special about that thought that, you know what, we'll go where we trust the Constitution, and we'll go where you send us, and we'll get after it. Now, that picture is Memorial Day physically last year. It was stunning. And this year we did it, of course, virtually. But you can see that rooftop seats well over 300. And it's an amazing place. And that's a real story you can't make up. It just happened. He had like Birkenstock, shoe sandals and no socks. And I thought, who's this vagrant guy running around my museum?
And he was the architect. And I'm going to share some other photos here of indoor and outdoor. It's just an inspiring, wonderful place. And
that's called the Great Hall. I'll kibitz as well as we go, Todd. That's a Great Hall. You come to the guest services desk. Those are all photos from a Veteran Portrait Project. And on that side, you see how they look today with something that was special to them. And on the other side is how they looked when they were a young officer, young soldier, sailor.
That's right.
And, you put about 300 people for parties and reunions and stuff in the Great Hall. You can see it say honor, connect, inspire, and educate. And those are the 4 pillars. And that's the other kind of, country Western lingo. It's, how many pillars did it take, weight bearing pillars? And the answer is none. It's all arches, except for the pillars of honor our veterans, connect America to our veterans and veterans to America, inspire everyone to service bigger than self, and to educate our K through 12. And what I'm finding, having been here now 18 months open and 2 years in this city, is we're educating America about veterans more than we're educating kids about patriotism. And there's so many who have no idea what you've done. You keep going.
Yes, and that's something that the Veterans Breakfast Club, of course, is always preaching. That I always think, I'm not a veteran, and I always think that non-veterans get more out of our programs than veterans do, because it's easy now than it was when I was a kid. Easier now to go through your daily life without ever encountering a veteran or somebody serving in the armed forces. I think most of us are kind of disconnected from those who serve in the military, and that the civilian military gap is a real thing. And I see this kind of storytelling and your kind of museum as helping to bridge that gap. And I took a picture of those words that are in your museum: honor, connect, inspire, and educate, because the Veterans Breakfast Club mission is to connect, heal, educate, and inspire. We're exactly the same, except you use honor and we use heal. So and here's another view of that Great Hall.
Yeah,
And the other thing that I really found interesting is that it walks you through the experience of joining the military, being in it, and then separating. So it's, it begins with kind of, recruiting, induction, the oath, training, basic training.
Each one of these alcoves, they're called thematic alcoves. And for an infantry guy, that's a lot of syllables in one sentence. So thematic alcoves. And each one, it begins with a nation called, and then leaving home, and then the oath of office and basic training. Now, inside the alcove are videos of the veterans. We started with 250, long before I even knew Columbus, Ohio existed. We started with 250 veterans, down selected to 25. And these 25 men and women from World War II to present day each speak to one of those stepping stones that Todd just talked to us about, of the 14. Letters home, coming home, families of the fallen or our fallen, and transitioning and transforming our communities as we get back into it. So here's coming home picture. That's the backside of the alcove. And of course, this hero's coming back in a flag draped coffin. So as you walk through, and then on the inside rail, what I call the kind of NASCAR rail is a timeline that takes us from 1775 through to today. And so you can see the red along that rail is a timeline. And then we're on the home stretch here as we head back towards the store and all. This national conversation is you can walk up and answer a question or write a question. And we take these and curate them and put them in a database so that eventually we'll have an online exhibit. And so on day one, little girl, Andre, age 7, drew a picture of a house, and her question with a little smokestack and windows and flowers in the garden. And she wrote, "If you love mommy and you love me, then why do you deploy?" And holy crap, all thousands and dozens of people responded to that little girl about, we're here to stand between, you and evil. And, in this world, there are sheep and wolves and sheepdogs, and we will protect you. So it really, there are tears that occur. This is just a data star. I get in trouble sometimes calling it the Death Star because you walk into it when you're not looking. And, but the data, where those two folks are standing by the books in the back, you can type in your information and then it goes in our database, but also it'll display and you can take a selfie, or if you're there and you got a battle buddy or wingman or shipmate, you could write their name in and take it and then send it home as well. And then this is sort of the summary room, and where the veterans take a last shot of telling their story, and then it concludes with John F. Kennedy saying, "Ask not," in his whole speech.
And so veterans who visit can actually record their story at the museum.
Yes.
If they want to.
Yeah, we've got right to the right hand of the most right-sided picture there. There's a story booth. We're actually tearing it out, Todd, and going to get a much better one, much more user-friendly one, and or an intuitive one. But we're also doing that online, and we're doing it by aligning with anyone who has veteran stories. We can partner together. This is the Gold Star Mezzanine.
There we go. That's us. Yeah, and I love this. I guess it's stained glass, but it's in the colors of ribbons, of campaign ribbons.
That's right. And so those ribbons there, and you can see on the floor how the light comes through. Probably about 45 minutes later, it's going to be on every one of these brown rails. And then about 40 minutes after that, it's on the wall where you first walk in. And did they do that on purpose or what? I don't know. And then where that gentleman's standing in the way back is called the Affinity Booth. And I flew a flag over the tomb of the unknown soldier. And then in that, there are mirrors. And so as you look left and right, there are flags forever. And it symbolizes that America will always provide youth, will always have youth that will stand up for this country in an enduring and patriotic way.
How neat. Look at that view. This is from the roof.
It is, yep. And
wow.
So we've had parties up there. We had Memorial Day service. We had 600 singers from a local singing thing. We've had 25 Harleys and some bad looking hombres up there, and a fashion show. So it's really versatile and really fun. And this is the Memorial Grove. I like to say it's got 43 elm trees. Why 43? Because one died. Why 44? No one knows. It's a strange number. But and you could buy one of these benches. Your unit we're now reaching out for associations and units, and eventually we'll probably wall the rest in so we can put pavers and otherwise pay tribute to our veterans.
And I will share, this is a picture of our group, the Veterans Breakfast Club, when we visited the museum last May. And again, it was just such a pleasure to walk through and talk with our veterans as each one of those thematic alcoves, is that what you called them?
That's it. Yep.
Thematic alcoves. Each one of those thematic alcoves just prompted the memories in the veterans. It was so neat. And we had several people who are here today on the Zoom side were part of that trip. And one person who was a special part of it was a docent that we met there. Hello there, Terri. How are you?
Oh, excellent.
This is
Hey.
Major Terri Swank. How are you? Good to see you.
Good
You're
seeing you
retired
guys.
major, correct?
Retired, yes.
Yes. And we met you at the museum.
Yes.
Weren't we a great group?
You were the best group that I dealt with.
Ah, that's right.
And I mean that from my heart.
It was such a wonderful group of people, such a wonderful trip. Unfortunately, Andy Niggett, who was a Marine who came with us, couldn't make it today. He's actually grieving the loss of a friend, a fellow Marine. But he, saw a picture of himself in the museum and saw somebody who treated him in the museum. And boy, was that a moving experience.
Yeah, I remember.
It was very moving, yes. And I think, is Larry on here too?
Larry is on here.
Because he was right there with Andy Larry is the one that told me about the nurse that treated him in Vietnam. And kind of the whole story behind that. And then we went over, I'm like, so do you want your, because we were over by the computer, by the star, when Larry was telling me the story. And I'm like, well, do you want to go over and take your picture in front of her picture? And so we did that. And then we exchanged some special moments because, he's telling me a little bit about what happened to him, just briefly. And then when he realized what my job was in the military as a PA, he hugged me because, he said, it's people like you that saved somebody like me. And it got emotional. Yeah.
You're going to make me cry, Terry. So let's change the subject. You were a physician's assistant in the military. You joined the Army first or National Guard first?
The National Guard.
And why? Why did you join?
It was a good thing to do at the time.
Why?
Just because.
Is there a story here that you?
I joined 1 week after high school in a few years ago.
A few years ago, 1 week after high school. What did your poor mother say to you, or father, or guardian?
My mom. Yeah, she was proud of me because we have a family history of military. My grandpa was in World War I. I have an uncle that was in World War II in the European campaign, another uncle that was in during World War II in Alaska. My dad was in the Navy, and then me. And my niece, who followed after me, was just promoted to Command Sergeant Major and is going to be the hospital Sergeant Major at Fort Jackson.
Wow. So you come from a military family just like General Ferriter does. And but you learned all your training. So all your medical training was in the service, was in the military.
Correct.
Well, and how many years?
I started out enlisted as a medic and went through training down at Fort Sam Houston, Texas. And then a year and a half later, I went back down to Fort Sam and became an operating room specialist. But then I didn't, because I was in, at the time, what was called a clearing company, kind of left over from the Vietnam era. So you had 3 platoons of medical, and then the headquarters platoon, which was your mess section and your motor pool, your commo, and things like that. And then that evolved. Our Met Brigade went away in '97. And I was also on active duty with the National Guard. And, building up the years. And so then I decided to apply to the PA program through the military, and 9/11 hit. So the board was supposed to meet, but then 9/11 kind of postponed the board. So, I just kind of, that carrot just was hanging out there waiting for a decision. So then in 2002, I went through the PA program. So I had to take off my E7 Sergeant First Class rank and wear OCS for 2 years because the program results in a commission.
Okay.
And then at graduation in 2004, I was commissioned as a second lieutenant and started all over.
started all over, and you did a deployment after that, right, to Iraq?
I did Iraq in 06, 07 during the surge, and then Afghanistan in 11, 12 during the drawdown.
Could you give us a sense of what your life was like on the ground during the surge? I mean, your everyday life. What kind of work were you doing?
So initially I was on a place called Camp Liberty, which is a really big place. And I was in a big clinic working with, we had 3 doctors and a PA. We had 3 places total. So the other 2 PAs were out at other clinics at different locations. So we had, at our clinic, we had like routine sick call, but we also had lab, we had x-ray, we had holding capability for like 48 hours. So it was a pretty big clinic and we were really busy. And then a few months into it, I was sent to another location called Fob Shield, which was on the east side of Baghdad next to Sadr City. Not a good place.
No.
Because it was, again, during the surge and a lot of bad guys in that area. And then plus we had the MOI overlooking our FOB. Our FOB was inside of an Iraqi
Excuse me,
FOB.
what's the MOI?
Oh, I'm sorry, the Minister of Interior.
Okay.
So there were some, some bad guys hanging out there. But our FOB was inside an Iraqi FOB. But the LZ was on the Iraqi side. So there was a security company there and they always provided security anytime a helicopter came in, just for like routine flights. But a lot of flights were canceled a lot because it was just a dangerous area. They didn't like flying there. But if I ever needed a medevac, that was not a problem at all. So at Shield, it was just myself and 4 young medics. And it was trying times.
How tired do you get in a situation like that? I think it, not being a veteran, never having experienced war, I think I was surprised when I first started doing Veterans Breakfast Club work to learn just how tiring war is for so many people. I mean, people who are, there's always not enough, there's never enough personnel. It's a 7-day-a-week, 24-hour-a-day job. How do you keep up your energy?
You find ways to decompress, so like in the one alcove, it shows the guy playing the guitar with his buddies around. You have to find a way to relax, besides doing your laundry and the normal stuff like that. I was fortunate. I was called a fobbit. I did not go outside on missions. General Ferriter and his guys were the guys doing the hard work.
But you made a point that's important, Terri, that this idea of compression is really powerful. And you can get through day to day to day to day, and then it might take you a year after you're home. It might take 10 years. It might take, the rest of your life to decompress. And so a lot of things that we can do while there to relieve the stress or to recharge, but it's running your battery. And when I went to Iraq the first time, my friend Carter Ham said, "You are going to be so tired after you leave here," and because you're amped up, you're on coffee in Copenhagen and you name it, and on a day-to-day basis, and then you do it again. A story that I had was that they sent me a chaplain when I was the commanding general of Fort Benning, and he had not deployed. And so now we're talking about drill sergeants that have deployed 2 and 3 times, and they're working a trail, which is not taking a knee and relaxing. So they're on the trail working. And I said to the chief of Army chaplains, I'm sure he's a great padre and can say a prayer really good, but there's no way he can understand what these people have gone through. Day 100, and then day 101, and then day 200, that's what Terry's saying. When you hear that word compress and decompress, in my world, that's a very powerful thing that impacts our families afterwards, like we talked about earlier, and our spouses and our friends, frankly.
And there's a lot in the museum about pertaining to military families. You know, another thing that I've learned, not being a veteran, hearing these stories, is that when somebody joins the military, in a sense, the whole family does, because everybody's, you know, aware of the deployments and the you know, the commitments that are being made. There's a lot of worry and longing at the end. You quoted that wonderful thing that girl wrote the first day the museum was open. You know, you have a family, you spent 35 years in the Army, in so many different staff and command positions. You know, you seem to have been everywhere, done everything. Can you speak to the stresses on the family for somebody who has a career like yours?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, my view is everyone's working an issue, and you know, being a good husband, wife, spouse, partner, son, daughter, it just takes work. I grew up in an Army family, and I moved 18 times before I was 18. And then I raised an Army family, and we moved them, you know, 20 times. And then I commanded all the Army bases around the world to take care of Army families. And the fact is that the military member signs up to go when told. And so there've been, you know, if you remember, we were soldiers once and young in our Vietnam families, and my dad and all that. When they deployed, they were told to get off a post. You don't necessarily get to stay on post. Right. And in the big 90s and 80s, we lived on post, we deployed and all that, and our family stayed. The millennials move off post. They take their $1,500 a month and go see mom. And so now you've got these vacancies in all these family housing. But in the end, it's a group of people who need to take care of each other and make sure they're okay. And then frankly, what you're doing with the Breakfast Club and what I'm doing here is to continue to make sure you're doing all right, buddy. You know, you're doing okay, and provide the venue and the opportunities for someone like Terri, you know, our fabulous people upstairs to say, you know, you guys doing okay? Or what else do you want to know about this? Or, you know, thanks for what you're doing.
You know, I want to invite our viewers here on the Zoom side and on the Facebook Live side to ask questions of Terri or General Ferriter or anybody, any of the veterans here, about their experiences. I know that Ken, Larry, Ben, Wright all went on that trip to the National Veterans Memorial Museum. Guys, any of you have, okay, good. Larry, how are you?
I'm terrific. First, General, I'd like to thank you. When we came, you came and greeted us, which I thought was really great. When Terri talked about the experience we had all together, I act as a docent at the Heinz History Center here in Pittsburgh. So I know some about what it takes to be a docent, and just want to let you know, you have one of the best in Terri. She was absolutely great in terms of being with us. She then became a friend because she went with us down to New Orleans as well, visiting the World War II Museum. Nice. And she has become an absolute friend. What she talked about with Andy doesn't usually talk about the experience that he had in Vietnam, but he was wounded with an RPG and was basically told that he was a bleeder and he wasn't going to make it. But for whatever reason, and he says he still doesn't understand why, they decided they were going to treat him, and they did. And even with all the support that it took and over 7 years of surgeries and everything else to put him back together again, when he meets a corpsman, when he meets somebody who is in the profession like Terri, one of the first things he's going to do is thank them and give them a hug. So I wanted Terri to understand that. So I told her, and as it turned out, he knew the nurse that was on display at the museum, and his wife likewise. They had met with her many times, so he was well aware of her. And aside from it being just an emotional experience, it was really a personal experience. So the museum itself, for anybody that hasn't been there yet, it's unlike any other of the museums to the military, because this doesn't have the kind of artifacts that you normally see. There's not a lot of airplanes and tanks and weapons, etc. It's photographs, it's stories, it's really focused on the veterans, which I thought was really striking, but it's really powerful. And so I totally agree with Todd. And you know, I love Terri. I think she's fabulous. So make sure you give her a raise.
Terri, you retired. Oh, yeah, Terry's all right. Terri, you retired from the military, and I imagine well, both you know, General Ferriter and you, Terri, it's difficult to come home from a deployment. It's difficult to separate from the service. The civilian world, as you know, is very different from the military world. And there are a lot of things that you miss when you separate from the military. Does working at the museum, does it help that?
Yes, a lot. It helps me reconnect with veterans, and there is, regardless of what period you served, there's a special bond between veterans that strangers, you know, that never served together, but you have that connection that you serve together in a way, you experience the same things in a different kind of way, you know, different generations or different wars or whatever, but there is that special bond. So for me, you know, when I found out that this new place was coming, the new Vets Memorial, I was all over it, because it's my way to give back and to meet other veterans and to, you know, have a discussion with them when there's time available, and just to thank them, because when you come to the National Veterans Memorial Museum, it's not about me, you know, even though I'm a veteran volunteering there, it's about you guys coming in the door and enjoying your experience. And so I want to make sure that when the veterans come in, or even the non-veterans, you know, that they have that great experience to see, if they didn't experience the military, what it was like in the military, you know, as you go through the different alcoves, and to have that appreciation for, you know, the non-veterans, for the veterans. But yeah, there's a special connection there with the veterans.
And what was so neat at the museum was to see families touring, going from alcove to alcove. And, you know, you guys, some of you veterans, you don't talk much about your service. To many children of veterans and grandchildren of veterans, or nieces of veterans, a veteran's service is like a black hole. You just don't open that door. You don't go in there. You don't know, you know, what it means to them. The museum is a great place to kind of go, where families could learn kind of about their own families, their own parents or brothers or sisters or cousins. Ben Wright, you have your hand up. How are you, Ben?
Oh, I'm doing great. Yeah, I also wanted to give General Ferriter my thanks, because that was very impressive that, you know, this busload of folks from southwestern Pennsylvania appears, and he came out personally to welcome us and greet us. And I really enjoyed the perspective of what we want to do with Veterans Breakfast Club, you know, for non-veterans, to get the concept what is served. For veterans, you know, we identified with it, but besides the architecture was the timeline that goes in a circle around the building, and the timeline is extremely well done. And if anyone doesn't appreciate the magnitude of the sacrifice that people have made from the Revolutionary War until today, and the cost of what it's been to preserve what we have as a constitutional republic, you know, just to appreciate the cost and what it's happened to preserve it. And that timeline sure does it well.
It also shows you, and it highlights that you know, as as a community, military members and veterans, the number of times that America has said, hey, something isn't just quite right yet, and they throw it over the transom to us and say, hey, you need to fix this. You know, today we call it social injustice, but all the changes that have been made were made by someone at that time who now is being vilified. So in other words, you know, yeah, you were all white units. Yeah, but we were all white units that integrated the Army. Or I did a little speech this week on, since 2015, women can be Rangers, infantry, Marines, fighter pilots. And so there's more tolerance in that timeline than anyone could ever imagine. There's more innovation and we'll give it a try, not just with a new weapon, but actually with the way we treat people. And I appreciate Ben bringing that up, because the timeline is in of itself remarkable to see how America has moved and how the military has been a pacing item for it.
Yeah, the military is often a microcosm of the larger society, but at certain points in history, it's on the forefront. It's in the avant-garde of change. I wanted to ask you, General, the same question I asked Terri, and that is, you know, you had a long, active, unbelievable career, 35-year career in the military, retired lieutenant general. You could have done anything that you wanted, I'm sure. Yet you chose this job, which was not an easy one, which is, you know, to bring this startup to life and shepherd it through at least its early years. Why did you choose this mission?
Well, the whole time I was in the Army, people would say, you know, who's your assignment officer and where do you think you'll go next? And I have always said that the Lord was my assignment officer, and wherever I ended up there's going to be a reason. And then we started the Ferriter Group, which is a leadership company. I'm still running that and do some work helping out inner city youth, helping out. We've done 64 different seminars for youth, all the freshmen at the Citadel, to defeat the contemporary issues of sexual assault, sexual harassment, depression, suicide, bullying, opioids now. Well, I could have got into what I would call, and many will understand, could have got in the chow line with all my other 3-star buddies and just hung around Washington, D.C., you know, take my, you know, 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 job and be some kind of program manager for Boeing or L3 or Raytheon or General Dynamics. I felt that that if I could remain unencumbered, then the right thing would come along. I was in fact the finalist to be the secretary of the VA, and that would have been a hell of a beatdown as a job, but I'd fix it. And someday I might. And just like running all the Army bases is fun until everything goes wrong and it sucks. And so I don't mind hard work. So on this one, we saw this, Margie and I saw this as a platform where this museum is a strength and resiliency platform that's so well anchored that anything we want to do to help and take care of people and impact lives, we can build it and do it. And it's not hard to convince people, though we get no federal funds, not a penny, no state funds, not a penny. It's not hard to convince people that our mission is noble and our audience is deserving. So I signed up. First of all, I'm easily amused. And, you know, I realized about a week into it, oh my God, you know, there's nobody here but me. And then we celebrated, you know, our first telephone and then a copy machine, you know, and a mail machine. So we didn't have to stand in line. And then, but I you know, when as my friends here have said, when a family walks through and the mom looks over at one of us, me or Terri, and says, he's never told anyone that, that's when we're hitting home runs.
You bet. Absolutely. And I do want to, you mentioned the Ferriter Group, and I wanted to share the website, theferritergroup.com. And another reason that we're grateful that you're on our program is, I mean, you're a motivational speaker and you give talks all the time, and it's we're grateful that you're devoting some time to us here today. Can you tell a little bit more about what the Ferriter Group does?
Yeah. I'm not sure if you're going to move anything around, but yeah. So we really talk about what speaking is about: inspired leadership. And every one of us, the theme that I use is every one of us every day, has a chance to make a difference in someone's life. And the reason I came up was, because there's a chance to meet you all as you got off the bus. Of course, that's what life's all about is relationships. So we talk about that. And then that's my dad with General Gavin. If you're a paratrooper, you'll know Jumping Jim Gavin there. And he sent my dad to airborne school at age 42 because my father was a leg and hadn't gone to jump school yet. And you couldn't work for the guy that commanded the 82nd Airborne all through the war, the big war. But we do seminars. So for the youth, for police, for wounded warriors, for anyone, for companies. And then if you tell anyone that you got 4 combat tours. So here you can see we're using Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as the metaphor for life. And this is Seattle SWAT that I'm teaching. I'm a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You can see on the picture there. And then defense community leadership. That was a bunch of Blue Star Wives. This is a TEDx if anyone wants to ever watch that.
I did watch it. I watched it. I wouldn't want to mess with you, I tell you. And
then, but the other side of it is, and these are the kids at the Citadel coming up on my screen and Jiu-Jitsu Lifestyle Seminar. You get people together and you let them talk to each other. There's more goodness in the room than there is in millennials or whatever you want to call them, Generation Z. They're awesome. They just need to know that they're going to have to grow up and be responsible someday. And you just start to show them the way. They'll find their way just like we did.
You hear that, Ellie and Libby?
Yeah. And then I was looking at Ellie when I said that. And then finally, if you run all the bases around the world, which I did, and you have 123,000 employees, which I did, and you have a $12 billion a year budget, and you deliver 300 services from renewable energy to public works to barracks to rifle ranges, 283 child development centers. So then the Ferriter Group becomes a consultant. They say, thanks for your service. Awesome that you have 100 parachute jumps and 5 combat tours, but you obviously can help us run a business or start up a business like the National Veterans Memorial Museum. So to me, this has just been business as usual. I'll probably write 6 books. One will be how I stood up the NVMN and no one noticed. The other is how I saved $3 billion in the federal government and no one noticed. One is going to be how we ended the war in Iraq with the Sons of Iraq and nobody noticed, and more. So to me, every day it's a joy, no kidding. And I try to bring that energy so that and to enable my staff and my, I'm that guy that says everyone's on our team, right? And so we don't have, the A team are full timers and the B team are part timers and the C team is volunteers and the D team are contracted employees. It's all one team here.
Amazing. I'm going to give the floor to Roland Glenn, not because I know he has anything to say, but he is our senior veteran in the Zoom room today, 96 years old, Army veteran, platoon leader, company commander from Kittery, Maine, joining us from Maine. He's told his story about the Battle of Okinawa here on our program. Roland, you're a cerebral guy. You're always having questions. Do you have a question for the general or for Terri?
What is the history? When was the museum conceptualized? Maybe you've already mentioned this, General, but I'm trying to get a sense of how long this beautiful structure has been there. How much?
Yeah, great question. So again, when I arrived, it was about 88% finished, and we were hustling to make the grand opening. Probably in 2012, John Glenn, the late great Marine fighter pilot and the senator and the astronaut, he could look down on the old vets. I don't know what the old vets was, Terri does, And it was an auditorium that said probably something like Franklin County Veterans Memorial. And he would look down on that, and he would call Les Wexner and a guy named Mr. Morse, who was another titan of industry and business here. And he would kind of, in my language, rag him out. He would say, that thing is not fitting of our veterans. And so he finally convinced, John Glenn finally convinced them in about 2012 to fix it. Now, they were doing things like Kitty Cat Show and Britney Spears and the original Arnold Muscle Factory shows. And every damn lawyer in Ohio took their bar exam here, and they've all told me. And so they said, let's fix it up. And at that point, they said, Roland, that it would cost $30 million to fix it, bring it up to code. And it wasn't going to be much better. And so when they heard $30 million price tag, they said, let's knock that piece of junk down and build something. So they raised $82 million, put together the best in the world at storytelling, which is Ralph Applebaum, the best in the world of architecture, which is Brad Clayfield, and even a guy named Lori Olin, who's the best in the world at landscaping. It was a flat piece of ground. They built the hill. They built the building and then built a hill into it, right?
Here is I'm sorry to interrupt you, but here is the picture of the Franklin County Veterans Memorial, which was on the ground of the current museum that John Glenn wanted to clear out of the way and repurpose for the museum.
Exactly. Thanks. That's the first time I've really seen it. And so then they raised the money, then they designed it. They pulled together 3 focus groups of sorts. One was a veterans focus group. So they kind of get the storytelling side right. And there's nothing worse as a veteran to see someone in a goofy uniform, wrong. They pulled together educators and to get the programming, especially the history of the United States correct, so we could have programming for the kids. And they also pulled together everyone in the community. So even though I was a startup and brand new, I wasn't a hostile takeover. And so I didn't have to fight my way into the city. I didn't have to fight my way to get people to come and join. And I can tell you, Central Ohio is very traditional, and everyone knows what they do for Memorial Day and the 4th of July and Thanksgiving Day and Veterans Day. And so you bring in something new into that ecosystem, then it'd be real easy for them to resist that change. So they struck ground sometime around 2016, Roland, and then we opened on the 27th of October, 2018. 27 October is awesome. The next day, someone said, what are you going to do for Veterans Day? It's a week and a half out. And then we knew that every day is Veterans Day here. Every day is one of our services or some recognition of a battle somewhere, and so it's lively, to say the least.
Once again, I would invite people to ask questions. Okay, Roland, you had another question?
No, that's all right. Go ahead, Todd.
No, I just wanted to invite people who have questions to ask a question about the museum or anything about the general service or Terry's service.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
Hi, General. Hi, Terry. Thank you both. Thank you, General, for saying that at the beginning. I've always thought, what is better to say than thank you for your service? And you saying, thank you for giving me freedom, just really threw a light bulb in my head. It's something that I'm going to carry with me definitely from now on. I'm not a veteran. I joined Veterans Breakfast Club about a month ago. Really inspired by the stories that have been told at VBC, and seeing that education is both a part of your mission and our mission. I was wondering if you could speak a bit to how the museum handles education. Yeah,
I've got a fantastic person named Stacy Queen that I'll connect you with. We started last year with field trips, and my view of we got sponsored by Battelle and another company to help to deliver curriculum. And so what we wanted to do is to develop almost what we would call read-aheads for the kids. And so in this case, the children come and the teacher can elect to assign them different parts of the history line. So Susie and Jimmy will talk about Joshua Chamberlain and the bayonet charge, and so we want to align with the the curriculum that they already have, that they're already studying that part of the year, and also bring interactive into it. We're now building out a virtual classroom so that the schools haven't decided if they're coming back, if they're going to 50-50, we don't care. That's like you're on a foot march and it's raining. You just get wet. You still have to keep walking, right? If you're a soldier. So to me, these conditions that have changed have nothing to do with our mission. It just opens more doors for creativity. So we'll continue to build out and figure a way to get to the classrooms. When we travel again, I like to think that the coin of the realm is one yellow school bus, and I like to get donors to buy a $900 trip. I don't want 24 and 26-year-old teachers having to argue with a comptroller on whether or not to come here. So we just get sponsors to pay for it and bring it on board. And I don't care if the bus has powered by Mattel or powered by, GNC. I don't care. We just want to get them here. And in the meantime, we'll bring it to them. We are. It's always interesting to me to think, Sean, that you ask the question, why aren't we doing that? Or many will ask us, have you thought about this? And the answer is yes, we have thought about it. And we had 400 members in November of 19. We now have 3,000, but we didn't have a membership contract or any way of doing anything in October. And so 13 different or 14 different contracts, of course, we went with landscaping and security early on. We went with IT early on, but now the curriculum build out is probably the next 2 years. And I certainly do welcome any ideas, and we'll leap ahead, accept the disruptive innovation or the way someone else is doing it, and then combine to now what's the next best way that both of us can work something. That's sort of our mantra. In part, partnering is the highest form of leadership. And if we all played Go Fish with our cards facing outward in life, then everybody would win. And so I try to bring that attitude and the collegial nature of the World War II Museum that you all went to. They've been super helpful. And I think it's almost a little bit because most museums believe they're on a chopping block. And so like a good barroom fight, they get back to each other and we'll survive if we work together. So we built this Veterans Education Carrier. It's like a little APC. It opens up with iPads in there and stuff. And you can program nearly anything. You'll see from the website, this is wonderful Stacy Queen and her energy. And she'll either sit on the floor with second graders or really get fired up with the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. And so those are the kind of things that people will ask me all the time. Hey, General, how do you want to do this or that? And I get to say, invent it. You invent it. Tell me how you want to do it. Have you ever had a job where you got to do that all the time? And so they've learned not to make recommendations because I'm going to say yes, and then they're going to have to do it. And so it's a lot of fun in that regard too.
Thank you, sir. And Todd, I definitely want a VEC. I'm sharing it's a very robust educational curriculum program you have at the museum. You can scroll and just learn a lot just clicking through. So I've learned, General, that collaborations are important, and that's definitely something the Veterans Breakfast Club really believes in. And secondly, when you're in a bar fight, you want to get back to back with the person you're fighting with. Is that the idea?
And you want to leave before the MPs show up.
And you want to leave before the MPs show up. Okay, these are all really good tips. Very good tips. If anybody wants to comment on that, feel free.
I won't comment on that, but I do have a question for the General. We said before our missions are very similar. So I'm wondering, with such a rich and 4-part mission, what's the most rewarding part for you personally, in your career and your job there?
A really good question. So people taught us a lot in our life and to say, write the mission and the vision of the NVMM. So you do that. And then they say, take it down to 3 sentences. And then you do that. And then they say, take it down to 4 words. And this is how you get to your essence. And so your question is really, you know, what's Mike Ferriter's essence with regard to this? And I think impacting lives, I could only get to 2 words, right? And so we impact lives when someone says, hey, a Tuskegee Airman, you know, is upstairs at the Tuskegee Airman. Sorry, Siri, you're fired. You know, Tuskegee Airman's upstairs. So you run up there, or, hey, there's a group from Pennsylvania upstairs, or you ask one of the young employees here, one of our youngsters, I want you to invent, you know, how we write grants. And she said, you know, Kellen says, okay. Or I said, I want you guys to come up with something for Memorial Day. And so we did a virtual run with 900 people in 34 states, you know? And so to me, watching people grow or impacting, or in the Veteran Business Alliance or the Ferriter Group, when someone says, no, that can't happen, and you know it's the right thing to happen, to being able to fight for that person and get it done. And so all of these are you know, you guys said, thanks for coming and see it. No, that's what I'm supposed to do. And every leader's supposed to do that. And, you know, if you ask the senior gentleman here, you know, how many generals, Roland, did you see, you know, and how many did you talk to? And often they'll say, I saw a lot, but I never got to talk to them. That's wrong.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about us. It's about, you know, the rank on your shoulders or on your chest is a symbol of servitude to the nation and to your men and women who's underneath you. They're counting on us to fight the good fight for them. They're counting on us to not let them down. And they believe in America, and they believe in the American way, and that leaders are men and women of character is what they believe. So Lauren, that's a little speech I give every once in a while when prompted, but to impact lives. So that doesn't matter. So on Saturdays, Margie and I go walk. We end up about 5 mile walk and swing through here with the hopes of running into someone who will say, I can't believe that, you know, that guy took the time to talk to me.
Yeah.
And all that. So that's kind of where it is right now. We're, you know, the Veteranpreneur store, you know, these guys and girls, you know, they say to each other, if we get out of this crap alive, let's start. You know, the Veteran Golfers Association, or Dogleg Reaper Belt, or Warfighter Tobacco, Lead Slinger Whiskey. You know, my wife says, let me get this right. Whiskey, tobacco, golf. And I said, yeah, you got it right. But to them, that's what it takes. And the ingenuity and energy and sparkle in the eye of the American soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine, Coast Guard, when they're downrange, is the same thing they bring to our communities. And so we can help. So why not?
Yeah, thank you for such a wonderful answer. I'm wondering if Henry Gordine, he's been commenting a bit here on our program today, and he just said, speaking to the leadership, to be able to walk with kings without losing your common touch. And he made he said something before. I think he would have a nice, hi, sorry to call you out there. That's what you get for putting stuff in the chat. I know you're cool with it, probably.
Okay. Yeah, General, first of all, you know, thanks for coming on. I sent you a post that I was born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina. So my high school is right next door to the Citadel. So the Citadel is the Bulldogs and Burke High School is the Bulldogs. So, you know, thank you very much for being on here. But I totally agree with you on being a servant leader and being able to do that in a way that, you know, not even just coming off as humble, but just being humble, because I think, you know, in the times that I've been in leadership positions, when you get down with, you know, in the Navy, when you get down with the deck plate sailor, you know, that's when you kind of learn whether or not you're doing a good job, because it doesn't matter what medal you get or any of that other stuff, because it's reflected upon the leadership that you imbue upon other people. And then one thing that Colin Powell has talked about was, you know, being inspirational. A leader has to inspire people. You know, don't just lead. Don't just follow me because of what I have on my shoulder or what I have on my chest, but because I come off as being a humble individual that can inspire you to want to be bigger than yourself. And at the same time, reciprocally, hey, it's, you know, I've gotten motivated a lot by just, you know, the young kids that were with me. It's just like, okay, I might get a little bit tired, but yeah, I got this young kid trying to outdo me, so I can't, you know, the first thing they want to do is, okay, I can beat the officer. No, that's not going to happen today. No, try again. So it's kind of a reciprocal pushing of the envelope, so to speak, in terms of you know, just kind of understanding where someone's coming from and building those relationships, because those relationships, you know, you're not going to only help someone else out. It should also be you helping. You know, it'll help you out too, just because of the fact that you might learn a little bit more about yourself even in that exchange.
Yeah,
that's all I got.
Yeah, that's great. A couple of things. First of all, when I went to school, Burke High School could probably beat the Citadel's football team.
I wasn't going to say that, sir.
I know, but we know the truth, don't we? And then really interesting thought, because when I interviewed my father-in-law, a retired Major General John Hemphill, hero, Distinguished Service Cross, a couple Silver Stars from Vietnam, DSC from Korean War. As we were wrapping up, I said, "Hey, sir, I got a question for you." So we use a saying like this: "Tell me how you think or react to what I'm about to say." And he's 93, and I said, "We say they don't care what you know until they know that you care." And he said, "Oh, Mike, they'll never know what you know, but they will always know if you care." And I went, "Whoa,
absolutely."
That's a loaded statement.
That one, you know. So, and it's kind of the thing you say to younger officers. Sometimes mid-grade NCOs, you would say to them, "Hey, quit being a big shot because you have more information." My son, both sons are field grade officers in the Rangers, as was I. And Dan's going to battalion command, and you know, he's in his third tour in the very elite outfit that I commanded and that he's now serving in. And I said, "You're in your third tour. You know, don't be such a know-it-all. Don't be such an expert. Of course, you know, and anyone that serves multiple, and I'm sure if you have multiple tours on a DDG, after a while, it's like, I've been there, done that, you know, and or whatever." So, but showing that you care as a leader means you don't walk past a person without saying hello. You just don't. You don't want someone to be at a picnic saying, "I met a guy, he was at the National Veterans Memorial Museum, and his staff and handlers had him so busy that he walked right by my dad or granddad." You don't want to do that. And then General Lloyd Austin was my boss in Iraq twice. He's an African-American 4-star, phenomenal leader. And he told us prior to our first deployment, I need a top 10. What are the top 10 things? And no matter what happens, that's going to be our guiding, you know, our left and right guardrails for this tour. And so we listed, we came back to him. I was a 2-star, he was a 4-star. So, "Sir, here's your top 14. And he said, "No, top 10. And so we went back and we played around and we came back. "Sir, here's our top 12. I said, "The next briefing will be 1900 on Sunday evening if you don't come back in 2 hours for the top 10. So we all got it. You know, these are all colonels and sergeant majors and 1s and 2-stars. And so we came back with the top 10 because we're not stupid. And, but all of them were things like defeat Al-Qaeda in the north, defeat the malign influence of the Iranians in Basra, create civil capacity. All of these were things to do and target. But one, and Terry, one was retain the success of the surge in and around Baghdad. But the last one was demonstrate inspired leadership. And the thought there was, you can't, if every soldier, everyone that deploys knows that they're there representing the country and that they get to decide how to react in every single situation. And that's what I finish every single speech, remarks, talk is, we all get to demonstrate inspired leadership. It's how we deal with people, whether it's at the gas station, in Walmart. You know, if your guy doesn't have a mask on, you can still hand him a cup of self-esteem when you ask him, hey, do me a favor and back up and social distance or put a mask on. It doesn't have to be anything other than that in every single interaction. And we got to go on our top 10, and we didn't work that Sunday. And so it was a double success.
You know, Jeff Witherell, I've seen you react to all this, and I know that you had a long Army career. You put in the chat that you worked for a lot of generals, and that when they go out and talk to the troops, that's the real barometer of the esprit. Can you talk about that a little bit? You've seen great leadership, I imagine, in your career.
Oh yeah, I have to thank General Ferriter though for that great spiel and being with us today, sir. Really appreciate this. I didn't even know there was a National Museum for Veterans. Just as an aside, I am a volunteer at the new U.S. Army National Museum at Belvoir. We haven't opened yet because of the COVID, but as soon as we get over this, we'll be working up there, and that's ready to go. But the reason why I made the comment, sir, is, well, you've been around these different units, you've done inspection tours, you've been all over the place. And I noticed when you go into the units and everything, I was part of this, the general would get the dog and pony show from the officers and get the readiness of the unit and get the overall status of where we stand and all this. But he wanted to get out of there as soon as he was there. He just, okay, I understand. Okay, I got it. The first place he wanted to go is if we're out in the ranges, he wants to go to the range. If we're in garrison, he wants to go to the motor pool and talk to soldiers. And that's all they wanted to do, is spend their time with the soldiers, because the soldiers were right up front with the general. I mean, if it's screwed up, the soldiers will tell you right out, it's screwed up.
Yeah.
And that officer will say, well, sir, we have some challenges and we got some problems. We're working on this. But soldiers, boom, they'll hit you right in the face with it. And I worked all kind of infantry systems and everything like that with the infantry. And yeah, the contractors will give the spiel to the general, and this is going well, sir. We're on schedule. Boom, boom. You ask the soldiers, and they'll say, "This is the biggest bunch of crap, sir. We shouldn't even field this." You know, and I'll tell you right out, you know, that probably influences the generals more than any officer, you know, can say. Because if the soldiers don't like it, they're going to blow it off. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, Jeff, that's right on. And one time, General Dempsey was holding a meeting at Fort Benning. He was the TRADOC commander, which means he's the 4-star, and I was one of the 2 stars commanding Benning. And he said, well, let's ask General Ferriter, how do you know if the gear's good? I said, just walk behind a platoon. They'll throw it away. If it's crappy, you know, and don't walk behind them in the daytime. Just follow them after a night movement, and you'll find everything that isn't worth carrying. And they'll say, oh, I dropped it in the swamp, I lost it, whatever. And but they won't kid you, and also they'll tell you right up. I think leaders need to learn, you know, ask a simple question like, "Hey, what's the standard?" And that opens all of the doors, you know. And you can walk up to someone and say, you know, "Hey, what's the standard?" Or, "Hey, teach me how this weapon system, this weapon, this vehicle, this computer." I wrote a note when my mic wasn't working in our test fire here. I say, "Hey, Brad, what's the standard on the mic? How do I fix it in Zoom?" And so if you're willing to not be perfect, it makes it really easy on everybody. And so you just say, "Teach me." And if it's Mike Ferriter, teach me 3 times. That's when I get it, Sean. The first 2 times are, you know, information.
What a fascinating conversation this is. And Sean, you had the great idea that you just chatted to me that we need to do a whole program or programs on leadership. I have so many questions. Chris, we're coming toward the end of our program, but I see you have a question or a statement.
Yes, General, thank you very much. This has been very, very, very great presentation, interesting presentation. But hardware aside, I mean, hardware is what it is, and we have some of the best, etc. Based on your experience and how you see forces now, it's always been said that our adversaries, whoever they are, whether they're Chinese or Russian or Iranian, their relationship with officers, their command and control, their ability to improvise, etc. We have the greater advantage in that respect. can you verify that, or at least comment on whether that's true? That gives us an edge because of the American spirit, because of leadership and the ingenuity of our service members.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's the easiest way, Chris, to think about it is it's just in our fiber, it's in our DNA. You know, we're a country, you know, the history and traditions. And remember, I said I'm an infantry guy and I'm not a historian, but I am big time on the human dimension and how that impacts. And so our leaders are born and cultured and trained to be innovators. And the example that I would give you is, under no circumstances could someone ever say, my strap on my rucksack broke, so I quit. I went home. Or my rifle jammed, so I quit trying to qualify. It's like, fix it, you know, fix it. And so, and then, you know, the IT and radios and heads-up displays, they're all helpful and enablers. But at the moment of truth, it's the spirit of I will not allow this to happen to my team. You know, and I don't know if everyone heard, but I didn't furlough anyone. I refused to furlough people. The museum next door still has not opened its door, and they cut 140 families at least who are unemployed right now. I refuse to do it. I said, go find a way to make money. Come on, let's go. And so I think that, and then you know, is it nature or nurture, right? That thought. And I think it's nature, but it has to be nurtured. It takes a bad leader about 3 days to ruin a unit, and a toxic leader to really, because everyone will just, I got asked a question by Tammy. Normally when we send out an e-newsletter, the chief of staff reads it, makes sure it's squared away and all that. She said, well, chief's on leave or paid time off, so I'll send it to you. I said, no, you will not. This organization will not operate because of me. You know, it'll operate despite me. I said, Tammy, do your best. And if you totally blow it, then you'll learn. Someone will tell you, you know, you got the guy with the, you know, helmet on backwards kind of thing. But we have to fight as leaders this desire of youngsters to want to give a back brief and a pre-brief. They have to fight it. Say, no, you go ahead and, you know, how are we going to do the opening ceremony? Well, okay. Well, tell me what Colin Powell's going to do, because I'm going to have to brief him. But the rest, you know, be inspiring, you know, to use Henry's word. So, but you have to fight it, because 50 times a day, someone's going to come up to you. But it's a dynamic. I mean, why would we go to the country of Georgia to train our Marines and our soldiers to train their army? Why would we spend 20 years in Afghanistan? You know, why would we spend 15 or plus years in Iraq? I was responsible for training all the Iraqi Army, Air Force, helicopters, police, Minister of Interior that Terry talked about, oil police. You know, they have a police for everything. Corduroy police, probably, who knows? And so, but that's because our youngsters will belly up and say, when they get out there and they don't have what they need to train, they'll create it. And that dynamic we find on the battlefield, and we find in the boardroom and you know, in the veteranpreneur businesses as well. It's awesome.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Lieutenant General Michael Ferriter. And we also had Major Terri Swank with us today. And thanks to all of you for joining us on this program. This was devoted again to the National Veterans Memorial Museum, the nationalvmm.org. You could learn about their open hours and their virtual programs and their curriculum. And I do encourage you to check it out. And if you could get to Columbus and see the brick and mortar, it's really a remarkable place. General, thank you for taking so much time with us today. I hope you'll join us again sometime, especially to talk more about leadership. I think this is a really rich subject. What makes good leaders, what makes bad leaders. Mm-hmm. And everybody's had an experience with it, either as leading or, you know, being involved with a leader who inspired you or didn't inspire you. So I think that should be put on our schedule, and we will talk about that as a staff, right, Lauren and Sean?
That's right, Todd. And I know that we're a little over time. I want to just take a quick second to thank General and Terri for coming today. And I'm not sure if you want to still close with, at our events, we typically close with God Bless America. We have Katie joining us from Bakery Square. She is on the front lines over there at what she affectionately calls Building 2.0 over there at Bakery Square. Hi, Katie.
I didn't recognize you with your mask on.
I know. I have to go outside so I can take it off and sing.
I know we're a couple minutes over, but if you want to hang around, Katie is
absolutely. Of course, we're gonna hang around.
Okay, I'm outside now, so I can take it off and sing for you guys. It was a wonderful presentation. I haven't been able to see one in a while, but this was really great. So thank you very much, General, and everybody else. It was fantastic. But anywho, here we go. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Right. Thank you so much, Katie. Thank you. Thanks to all of you. And I hope to see some of you at least on Friday morning, July 10th at 9 a.m. for our VBC coffee hour. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, General.
Hi, General.